we appreciate you being on here this morning. I certainly apologize for all the trouble on your end of having to go through being on hold and all that.
Oh, that's all right.
But I know we've got a lot of people who've been looking forward to this interview, so we're going to get right into it. And, of course, my guest this morning, the Atomic Dog, Ali Stevens. You may know him from Memphis Wrestling as Ali, from Power Pro Wrestling, or a lot of the people in this area may remember him from a lot of the independent shows when he was the Atomic Dog, Steve Sharp. And I know the first time I saw you.
Dog.
Yes,
the
exactly.
real Atomic Dog. I mean, there's another one floating around. He's a cool dude, but he's not the real Atomic Dog.
That's right. I've seen him around as well. And if anybody had seen you and then seen him, they would certainly know that it wasn't the same guy. Cause
I hear that a lot.
I know the first time I saw you wrestle, and we'll see if you remember this match or not, was in Tupelo, Mississippi, on an IWF show, and you were wrestling Big Don Brody.
Oh, wow.
And that's a ways back there.
Man, you trying to make me feel old, ain't you? You're trying to make me feel like an old man.
But I tell you, the thing that impressed me about that, I was at that show, and I had a friend with me who was just, a fan of local wrestling. And he went to a lot of the shows, and around that time, a lot of the guys, there was all like little skinny guys, or there was big fat guys like me. You and Don Brody in the ring, I mean, here were two guys, big guys that looked like wrestlers, they dressed like wrestlers, and you actually felt like you were seeing, two big-time wrestlers in the ring, and it wasn't what them folks were used to.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But, seeing you then, you had to know that you were going to move on to bigger and better things, and I saw you many times after that, work shows with you in Corinth and different places.
Right.
And after touring the area quite a bit as the Atomic Dog, you showed up in Memphis Power Pro Wrestling. And Atomic Dog, great gimmick, great look, ring gear, the whole 9 yards. But when you showed up in Memphis, it was as Ali with a totally different persona.
Right.
So first of all, how did you end up in Memphis? And second, why the change to Ali?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show.
No problem, man. We're glad to have you.
I want to thank the fans down in that area who supported me. They've made me feel really at home down in Memphis and Arkansas and stuff like that. As far as going, me ended up in Memphis. Actually, I ran into Brandon Baxter, and I consider him a very good friend. And I kept going. I went to the television station once or twice, and I was leaving the station, and Brandon stopped me, and we talked, and he told me this idea that he had. And he actually gave me a tape that he wanted me to look at, and I looked at the tape for a minute. I said, yeah, we can definitely do this, And that was basically it. The Atomic Dog gimmick is a great gimmick, don't get me wrong, but, you got the Junkyard Dog, you got Red Dog, Rodney Mack, who's a friend of mine who I totally respect, who does, that's basically the same gimmick. Then you had that other guy going down there who was doing the Atomic Dog also. You got Rick Steiner, who does the dog-faced gremlin. It's just so many people doing the barking and the chain.
True.
It's just so many people doing that. And no matter what, I grew up, I actually grew up in the shadow of Junkyard Dog, because I was trained by Harley Race.
Right.
And they put me right in that gimmick, Sylvester, which is, JYD's real name. He had came to Harley's thing once, and we put it together, and it just seemed like I was just in his shadow. And it was time to get out. It was time to get out of that. It was time to let him do his, let him especially after he passed away, And I think it's as I got older, and even now, like I do a lot of stuff Mid-South Wrestling for Bill Ash, and Bill Ash is like one of my mentors too, and they still want me to do the character, but to me, it's kind of a the man who brought it to the forefront has passed away. Let him give him his piece. Let there be one real dog. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the way I see it. It's just every time I go out there and do that, it's not like I'm actually going out there doing a tribute to JYD. I'm actually going out there basically doing a gimmick all the way down to the chain that another man actually, who has passed away, one of the guys who opened the doors for us. And Like I said, if I'm on, and even now I do shows with ICW, International Championship Wrestling. You know, we tour all across the country and we do a lot of overseas stuff. And every once in a while I'm on a show with Rick Steiner, and it's just too much. You know, it's just too much to me, and I'm just getting where I'd rather not do it. So when the opportunity for Ali came along, it was something different. It was something fresh. The character is really not that different when you think about it. You know, I just don't come out and bark with a chain and a collar on. So, you know, but as far as the toughness, as far as the wrestling style, you know, it's pretty much the same.
And it was certainly a strong character because, I mean, you were over with the Memphis crowd from the get-go. I mean, you were one of the most popular guys in Memphis right out of the chute.
Right.
So it certainly didn't lose anything by changing gimmicks, for sure.
Well, I mean, I got to give that to Randy Hales and Brandon Baxter. I mean, you know, they ran Power Pro, and the writing that we had was just, I mean, it was great, you know. And I know that a lot of people talk about that at the time we were actually running separate with Memphis Championship Wrestling, and a lot of people are looking at the numbers of, you know, the numbers and stuff like that, you know. And I just feel, you know, you credit everything to the talent, but a lot of times you got to think about the people in the back who was writing it, who was laying the show out, and you got to give them credit. And they kept, I mean, they gave that character a good push, and it was something that was easy for me to run with. And the guys I was working were great too. I mean, Wolfie D. You know, at the time, Seven, the whole crew that was with Jim Cornette at the time, you know, they were a great bunch of guys to work with.
How did you like working with Cornette? Did you learn a lot from him?
Man, I've learned so much from Jim Cornette. It's, you know, it's amazing what someone like that can teach you in a short amount of time if you listen.
Right.
You know, if you listen. You know, I get so many people to talk about me now about coming back down to Memphis wrestling, and, you know, with Lawler, and people don't understand. You know, I'll tell you a quick story. I ran into Bobby Jagger. You remember him?
Yes.
Okay, I ran into Bobby Jagger at an ICW show in Kansas, somewhere way down in Kansas, somewhere in a military base. And me and him spoke, and I told him, you know, that I actually felt that I was ready for a second run. He watched me work, and he was going to make some phone calls and stuff like that. And then we were talking in the back, and he said, look, go back down to Memphis, learn what Lawler has to teach you. And that's what I did. And when I got down there, you know, when I came back down there, I mean, it was just great. So any chance you get to learn from somebody like Lawler or Jim Cornette, something like that, man, all you got to do is sit back and listen. I mean, you can learn more listening to these guys tell stories than you could, you know, at any training center.
Right. Well, so many guys, Lawler and Cornette, they're too old school, they're stuck in the past and all that, but they don't understand, I mean, whatever wrestling has become today, it's because of what it was in the past, and there's so much to be learned, like you say, from guys like that it's, you know, it's a shame that Cornette is not in Ohio Valley, you know, molding a lot of the guys, and Nick Dinsmore mentioned that when we talked to him. I think the guys they're losing an element of the training that they got when Cornette was there, and I think that's why a lot of the guys that have moved up since then aren't doing as well as the Cenas and the Randy Ortons and the guys who had the benefit of Cornette's, you know, knowledge when he was there.
Oh, exactly. I mean, because Cornette was about ring psychology. It's that simple. You know, Cornette was about pulling you into the show. You know, Harley Race, and you know, Bill Ash, you know, Jerry Lawler. They're all about pulling that crowd into the show. You know, they're all about that baby face being a baby face and bringing that crowd and having his back and getting that crowd. And the fact of what's going on with wrestling now, I don't want to use the S word. I don't want to do that. But the fact is, you know, when you can sit and watch a 2-hour show and it's not drawing you in, and that should be telling people something.
Exactly.
You know, if you're not cheering for that good guy, you know, if you're cheering for him because he's a star, that's weak. If you're cheering for him because you actually want to see him come, I mean, take Undertaker, for instance. I mean, I'm not a mark, but I will, if I watch the show, you ever notice how you will get behind Undertaker? You know, I mean, it's just, that's
right.
Old school.
Well, I mean, the thing about wrestling is you're there to draw money, you're there to draw a crowd. And talking about Jerry Lawler, I mean, who has drawn more money in Memphis, Tennessee than Jerry Lawler?
Exactly.
I mean, all the sellouts. He didn't do it alone, but still, Jerry Lawler just talked people into that building. So who better to learn from than Jerry Lawler?
I hear a lot of people say a lot of different things about King, but like I said, I'm not one to kiss anybody's butt, but I will say, if you cannot reinvent the wheel, and if you can listen and if you can learn from somebody like that, you do it. Then that's all it is to it. You sit back and you listen and learn.
And this is something I was going to ask later in the interview, but we're kind of on topic now, so I think I'll go ahead and bring it up. Having worked for Power Pro and worked for Brandon and Randy, and having now come back and worked for Corey Macklin, and I know Lawler has a big hand in it, but at the end of the day, it's Corey Macklin's show.
Mm-hmm.
How do you compare the two? Because that's been a hot topic in these parts of people who discuss Memphis wrestling. You were talking about drawing the crowd, and that's certainly what you want to do, but Corey really doesn't run many live events at all. And from most of the people who I talk to who work on the show, there's not a whole lot of time put into booking the show. He just kind of throws together, you and Brian are in the rare place of kind of having a running angle that's continued on and hasn't got dropped off. How do you compare the two, and where do you feel what do you feel the direction of Memphis wrestling has been since you've been there?
Well, you really can't compare the two. I mean, Power Pro was to me, Power Pro was a show. It was that weekly soap opera show, okay, from top to bottom, all right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference with Memphis wrestling is what I would call a product, okay? When you have a show that you're actually using for what you're using it for, that's when you are running storylines and things like that. Corey, a lot of people, dog Corey, but I don't see why, because, for this, he's doing what he wants to do. He wants to have a product. A lot of people forget Corey Macklin is in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a smart, very well done-up businessman, and if you think about it, that show was never short of TV commercials,
No.
It was never short of advertising. It was never short of TV commercials. And if Corey wanted to put together a show, some type of house show or something like that, he was able to do that. Just because he didn't run a show every week or every month or something like that, that doesn't make it a bad thing. It basically, because even Randy Hales will tell you that after a while, they had to stop running shows because it's so costly.
Mm-hmm.
It's so costly, and it doesn't really make that much money. The problem with it was, I really don't know. I think Memphis. I think, kind of like here in Missouri. Here in Missouri, there are so many little outlaw, rinky-dink shows running around. And why pay $10 or $15 a ticket to go see Ollie Stevens when he's probably going to be on this show over here where I can pay $5 or $6?
Yeah.
Right now you guys have how many little feds? Derek King, I love Derek King to death, but how many shows and stuff are these guys doing almost weekly? And why go pay? Put yourself in Corey Macklin's position. It's going to cost him. He's going to have $20 tickets to pay for his talent if he runs a house show. But most of those people are on these little shows. Like I heard it was a big stink about him not using more TV talent on some big show that he had put together. But yet, those same people are over in Corinth, they're over in Dyersburg, they're over in almost every week. And a fan is not going to pay that $20 ticket when they can go over and see almost the same show in Dyersburg.
That makes sense.
You're not going to do it. You're not going to pay $10 for an apple pie when you can get the same pie for $1.50. You're not going to do that. And then when you start looking at the kind of money that Corey has to put out to do a show, when Corey wants to run a show because of his status, he wants a big, nice building. He wants names and talent on that show. If he covers the card with most of us, and people say, "Well, shoot, half the people there we can see." That's if you notice, a lot of people I've tried to I was spoken to about coming down there, doing shows when I wasn't doing television.
Mm-hmm.
And when I thought about it, it was right that if I continued to do that, it would lower my value. You know, if I was doing, I mean, I love LaFon's over at Moondog Championship Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love those guys over there. They're a great bunch of guys, great to work with. But the fact is, you know, if I'm over there, you know, every week, and people say, well, we can go here and see Ali, why do we need to go? Why do we need to pay $10 or $15 if we can see him over here for $5? You know,
right?
So if you look at it that way, then you got to look at Corey's position. And like I said, I think that was one of the things that killed. I don't care what nobody say. That is one of the things that killed Power Pro. It stopped us from doing shows because there were so many smaller groups out there that was using our talent, and you could almost see the whole Power Pro roster, except for the guys from Ohio Valley. And if you notice, Cornette stopped that. Cornette made sure the guys from Ohio Valley were not doing house shows down there.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody always wondered why, because it cheapens their value. Now, don't get me wrong. I love working for Donnie Bass. I loved working for in Corinth for Rodney. You know, I mean, those were fun shows. It was fun. But at some point in time, you got to think about the money aspect.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a perspective that hasn't been brought out in all the discussions people have had about it, and it's a very good point. So.
Yeah.
Now, when you were in Power Pro, it was a WWF developmental territory, right?
Right.
Now, were you under any kind of developmental deal during the time you were there?
No. I have been spoken to a lot, and if you remember, there was a certain point in time where I actually started going to Ohio Valley.
Right.
And it was coming up, and a lot of people were. But see, my problem was, I was living in St. Louis, and it was just costing me so much to run back and forth. And to be honest, the mistake that I made was I was looking for that who was ready to do something with me now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, did I turn it down? Not in so many words, but it was discussed. And, you know, Cornette was pushing for me. There was a lot of people, but it was like, man, I'm if you time me, they time me. And like I said, I've been seeing what those guys were going through, and what Nick and everybody was going through. They were telling you was gonna have to move to Kentucky or move to Florida, and at the time, that just wasn't for me.
Right.
And at the time, I knew that I was working on something else. I actually got phone calls, and I had actually been speaking to certain other people, and as you know, I ended up in WCW.
Right.
I was looking for that. Let's go do it now. I wasn't even right now. I'm not gonna lie. Even right now, I'm more. I mean, I got a nice home. I live in St. Louis. I'm happily married. I don't really want to get sent down to Florida.
Yeah. Now, your answer there probably answered this question, but I was going to ask this just to see if you knew that this rumor floated around, because when I was working all the little shows like we were just talking about, the big rumor in the dressing room while you were in Power Pro was that WWF was grooming you to bring you in to be the new Ahmed Johnson. Did you ever hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just wondering, because I mean, they stated that pretty much as fact, so that's why it was shocking when you turned up in WCW instead, because pretty much everyone thought it was just a foregone conclusion that, and especially when you started going to Ohio Valley, oh yeah, he's gonna show up on Raw as Ahmed Johnson one of these nights, and then next thing you know, you were in WCW.
Well, like I said, there was a lot of discussion that was going on. I was talking to a lot of people, and the character, I mean, the Ali character was based off of old Ahmed character. The tape that Brandon gave me was actually an Ahmed, but it was before he became Ahmed Johnson.
Right.
So can I say that that's true? I can say that looks the way it was going to go, and it's very understandable that that's how people saw it. But as far as had they actually told me to work on this for that, no, they had not. But, they did. It was made clear that character was something that everybody was interested in. Even my time in WCW, as you notice, the time in WCW, the character did not change at all.
Right.
You know, even when I wrestled Mike Awesome, you know, it did not change at all. You know, so and who knows?
Yeah.
You know, who knows now? You never know.
Now, Kurt Angle was in Memphis around the time that you were. Did you see the bright future ahead of him that he ended up having? Did you feel that he was going to go on to such big things?
Oh yeah, I mean, Kurt was destined to be big in this business. The shocker to me is not Kurt. The shocker to me is was Steve Bradley not popping up like I expected him to.
Yes.
I mean that's what was the shocker. To Kurt being as big as he is now, no. I mean, he was an Olympic gold medalist. It was pushed. It was obvious they couldn't wait to get him on, you know, on television. But like I said, no, that was not a shock. I mean, he was really good on the show, and I mean, backstage, he had great attitude. Even now, when I talk to him, you know, I talk to him every once in a while, you know, when I'm at a TNA show or something like that, you know, and he's, you know, he really hasn't changed too much, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Steve Bradley was one of those guys who was pegged from day one. It was just, you know, a matter of time, you know, just count the days until he's off to WWF for bigger and better things. Do you have any insight as to what happened there, why that never panned out?
No, I truly do not, and I mean, I hear he's running a training center, and there's a good, I mean, who knows how many of those guys are coming out of there, you know.
Yeah.
It's I mean, that was a shocker to me, and I mean, that was, to me, I would say Steve Bradley is probably one of the most accomplished, not used wrestlers ever. I mean, that guy was great as a face, he was great as a heel, he was a flyer, and just a wrestler. You know, I don't know what happened, but whatever it was, somebody dropped the ball. So
definitely,
I'll say that to this day. You know, I mean, there's two guys who I am shocked that never got that opportunity, and Steve Bradley is one of them, and Derek King is the other.
Yeah, his name was going to come up. What are your thoughts on Derek?
Derek King is probably one of the best unknown talents in probably the world of wrestling to me. You know, this guy can wrestle, he can fly, his bumps. Yeah, I mean, even at his age, you know, I mean, this guy, you know, you could do a hip toss, and this guy feet touch the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and he can make it so funny. You know, I mean, he can pull you into a match in a comedy way or just in a wrestling way. You know, I mean, you cannot say when you watch the show that whenever Derek came out, it was not entertaining. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say that. You cannot say it's not, and it's obvious, you know, that he can draw. You know, I feel kind of bad that his gimmick to me got given to somebody else. You know.
Right.
You know, I'm sure Derek may not see it that way, but I do. You know, I'm like, wait a minute, you can't look at that gimmick and not say, damn, that's Derek.
Exactly. I asked him about that when I had him on the show, and he's a real good sport about it. And he's like, you know, I don't, you know, there's a million blonde white guys, and so you can't just say 'cause there's another blonde black guy that, you know, it's my gimmick. But yeah, you know, I definitely agree. I think, you know, somebody saw that and decided to run with it. But do you think it's just his size really that holds him back?
Yeah, I would have to say that would probably have to be it, you know, because there's no other reason for. I mean, what other reason could it be? I mean, you can't say he can't work. You can't say he hasn't been trained well. You can't say he doesn't draw. You can't say anything negative that I can think of about Derek King. You know, there are some guys that you can say, you know, well, they got a little funky attitude. They got a little, you know, they think they're hot stuff. I've been in the dressing room with Derek. I've known Derek now since Power Pro, so, and this is what, 07, 08. So that means I've known Derek King since 98, you know, and I have never seen a problem with him in the dressing room or anything. I mean, I don't know how he runs his locker room with his shows that he's running now, but, you know, evidently it must be going okay.
Yeah, I mean, he does well. I mean, wherever he books, you know, he usually draws well and is successful. And like you say, I mean, I've known Derek for a long time too, and he's always had a good attitude. He's always done whatever they've asked him to do, and he seems content with where he's at. So you know, that's good. But yeah, I'd like to see him get a shot someday at you know.
You know, I would think actually for Derek right now, I would think he should. I mean, this is just an opinion. You know, and opinions are like buttholes. We all got them. You know. I would think right now, if he could get a shot in Ring of Honor or the new NWA TV show they're starting up.
Yes.
You know, I think he would just roll. I mean, if any one of those two, if Derek could get on the ground level of something like that right now, he would just roll. You know?
And I think he could if he tried to do it. I don't know how much outside of the Memphis territory, for lack of a better word, that he really goes and works, anymore. But I would think he, even on a southern level, he's made enough of a reputation for himself that he could get in the door, like you say, in either one of those places, really.
Oh, definitely. Well, I actually throw some shows up in the Decatur, Illinois area. I throw like four a year, once every 3 months, and we have Ed Schumann from NWA Midwest, who is a strong mouthpiece for the NWA overall. And I actually, if you remember when I was with Harley Race for WLW, Dave Marquez, who actually runs the NWA television. So we're going to try to have them come to some of the shows, and when we do that, those are the shows that I'm going to try to bring Derek up and actually let him, at least talk to him or try to showcase and talk to him.
Right.
Derek is, like I said, he's one of those, like I said, he's always been a team player. And like on top of a great worker, he's always been a team player. And he's one of those guys who, if you ask him what you think, he'll pretty much tell you the straight up that I know of. It's like I said, him and Steve Bradley, I just never understood why they did not get that opportunity. I just never understood it.
One of those mysteries of the business, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about you going to WCW. How exactly did that come about?
How did it come about? I've heard two different stories, but like I said, in retrospect, I had already been talking to Terry Taylor, to some people, Terry Taylor and a couple of people down there at the time, and I had got this agency out of New York, who they're the ones who were claiming that they got me in, but it actually turned out to be that Terry Taylor, later on I found out that Terry Taylor had actually talked to Cornette and Randy Hales, and they got it for me. Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much how it went. He'd asked them how I was doing and what was going on, and the magazines were really pumping me up. Well, I don't know if you remember, but I was in a Best Of magazine, on the opposite page of Triple H.
Yes.
And after that, things just went, they just blew up. And I think that's kind of what kind of messed me up with WWE at that point back then, is when WWF bought WCW. I actually think there was a little salty feelings about me making that jump when I did, because as you know, like you said, I was going to Ohio Valley at the time, and there was only a handful of us who they were allowing to come in there and wrestle with their guys. So I don't know. I guess that's, one of the things where you took the wrong right, and I probably should have waited and went left.
Well, you certainly wasn't the only one. There were a lot of guys who that came back later on. But who could have predicted at the time? I mean, being backed by, Turner and everything, who would have ever thought WCW would have, completely folded there? Nobody would have saw that coming. But
and I truly believe if WCW would have got bought by anybody else other than WWE, if they would have got bought by someone else who wanted to do wrestling, a lot of us would still, probably would have still been up there.
Definitely.
I mean, Kevin Northcutt was up there with me, and he's a great talent. So there was a lot of people up there who got Robbie Rage, Well,
reading Bischoff's book and learning more about it after the fact, there were so many people at Turner's, broadcasting and all that, who just did not want wrestling. And even when WCW was at its most successful and just making money hand over fist, they still didn't want it. So, it's not really that they put themselves out of business so much, that just, like you say, they didn't get bought in time. And when they lost their TV spots on TBS, I think that's when Bischoff and them pulled out of buying it. So
Right.
But how was the experience working there? Working with Mike Awesome and some of the matches you had and the time that you did spend there.
Man, it was great. It was great. I mean, coming out, like I said, I got to do 3 nationally televised matches, and you come out and you got anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people. And I don't know if you ever got to see the matches, but I mean, I didn't get to do any junk matches or anything like that. I mean, I got to have some real solid matches, and it was great when the people started cheering for you. The power plant was great. I mean, the first, you got them hell days, when we first got down there, but they were actually, it actually worked out pretty well for us. The training, we was training with Paul Orndorff and Sarge, and they actually turned out to be 2 of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and it was great, man. I don't have any bad things to say about when I was in WCW, not a one, other than the fact that the way they closed sucked.
Yeah.
They sent I'd been doing the character. I'd even spoken to my writer. Stuff was already was being laid out. And go home, let yourself heal up, get yourself together. And I go home. Next thing I know, I get a letter. Hey, we're sold.
Wow. Now the man gets a horrible rap every which way, but what was your take on Vince Russo? You got to work with him a little bit there. Were they experimenting with like a heel character with you there, weren't they?
Right, yeah, and that's why I said I actually got to speak to the writer. Vince was actually writing, doing all that stuff. You know what? Let me say this, and I know there's a lot of people who might have a problem with what I'm about to say, but the fact is the same thing with Memphis wrestling. You can only do what you're allowed to do. I don't care if you're a writer. People talk about, well, Vince was the so-and-so man. But the fact is there were still other people ahead on top of him. You still got FCC rules and stuff you can and cannot say, can and cannot do. You still have a boss somewhere who says, no, I don't like that. Even in WWE, you got a ton of writers who write stories. And they submit those stories to people, and those people say yay or nay. And even if they say yay, you still got to get it through Stephanie and Vince. It still has to be okay. So you might write a story today, and it might have to go through 3 other people before it happens. You might write a character today. That's why some people don't understand. Everybody dogged out Russo, but for what? He gave good stories. He did decent writing. You got to remember the fact that he was not initially wrestling. He was in WWF first, and people were taking it, and then he came over there to actually try to lay his hand in actually running stories. But there was still somebody over him.
Right.
Remember, there was a lot of headbutting between him and Bischoff. So it's hard to say, man. I don't believe in dogging anybody out once they get to a point. I think you got to give them a fair shake. Like same thing I said about Corey Macklin. You got to give him a fair shake. You got to look at it from his point of view before you got to stand in his shoes before you can actually talk about him.
So you don't believe the conspiracy theory that Russo was actually still on Vince's payroll and come to put the company out of business?
No. Well, because I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I said, I'm at a point now in my life I don't really trip off the heat that I might get from stuff. But let's be honest. When WCW was at its tops and was making money, my father used to tell me that they used to have an old saying: I don't care if you got $1 million. If you owe $1,000,001, you're broke. Now, keep in mind, with WCW, every show, could you imagine what those shows were costing?
Oh, gosh.
The talent alone. Do you think Turner Broadcasting would have let that company go if it would have started? Everybody knows and heard that we were not showing profit for how long? And look at the talent that was on that roster at the time. You're talking about 1, 2, 3. You're probably talking about 4 or 5 $10,000 guys a night, not counting their travel and limo and airfare and hotel. Then you got how many other guys who were probably making, X amount of dollars a night. If you look at what Vince McMahon is a genius to the point that he takes new talent and he turns that new when you start getting it, when Stone Cold Steve Austin got to where he was $1 million man, he started fading them out. When John Cena is getting to where he's $1 million man, well, Rock, they did it with Rock. They found something else for them to do. They found something else for them to do. They found something else for them to do. As these guys are getting to that $1 million status, Vince starts weeding them out and starts bringing. Vince keeps his costs down.
That's true. Where WCW, you had a dozen $1 million guys standing around.
Not one, not a dozen. And you had to keep them. How are you throwing a house show with 2,000 or 3,000 people, and you got a guy on the card? You got two guys on the card making. I mean, that's your gate right there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's your gate right there. So, I mean, people, and we're not even talking about the trucks, to bring the ring, the setup. I mean, we're not talking about none of that. So how can one man? Everybody talks about Bischoff running. No, man, come on. It's all about the bottom line in any business is the dollar bill. And Russo had nothing to do with the dollar bill. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't up to him if certain people were on the that was the bookers. I mean it was man, come on. Can't no one man do that.
I've always found that funny when people say that Russo came in and shut down a $1 billion company or whatever it was at the time. It was ludicrous.
It was $1 billion company, but they were spending $1.1 billion. Like my
yep.
And it was called. And that's the real. Goldberg and Hogan and Nash and now don't get me wrong, these guys earned they were worth their money to a point, but having all of them on one show at the same time.
And there's only so much money they can all draw, but they're all going to make their money, and
right.
You can't win in the end.
Exactly. So you just can't do that. And then like I said, the cost to run them two big old semis across the country to do to hook up a show and the pyro and the licenses and the building fees and you get a building that holds 30,000 people, but you only put 5,000 in it. Something's wrong.
And that's what they were doing for the bulk of the final couple of years, anyway.
Right. And you got to think about you got to think about what's going on right now. You got to think about what's going on now. And you hope that it doesn't happen again. You got to hope that it does not happen again.
Well, I'll tell you, that's another downside of WCW going away, because I don't care what anybody says. WWE has been steadily downhill since the day Nitro went off the air.
No competition.
and TNA, say what you want about it. They're, I guess, to some degree, some kind of competition, but nothing close to what WCW was. And
right.
Their show, it's just, I guess the bar is so low now that, I don't like to just, I don't want to be one of these people who just knocks everything, but, it's just not good. I'm sorry. Some of the crap they throw out there is just, it's like they're not even trying, I really miss that. The most exciting time to be a wrestling fan was during the Monday Night Wars. That was an amazing time. All the great television and things that went on then, and I don't know that we'll see it again. Actually, all the firsts and all the craziness that went on that, had never happened before. Well, it's all happened now, so you can't replicate that. So
Right.
But now after WCW was gone, at least in these parts, you weren't seen for years.
Oh, I quit.
And so you left the business then?
Yeah, I quit you come back. I came back from WCW, and like I said, I had done a couple of national. I'd been on, like at least 3 national shows, and I was a weekly face, even doing a security bid or whatever. And I come back here, and it's amazing, when you're up there. What they say, everybody wants to be your friend, and then when you take that fall, everybody, where they go, where'd everybody go? I came back, and then the especially here in Missouri, these guys around here, they're horrible. The booker, the shows here, they're horrible, and I hate to down my own area, but except for Harley Racist Company, the rest of it just sucks. They want you to come in and you weigh 260 pounds, and they want you to wrestle and put over this 150-pound guy. You know, everybody's talking about, and the only thing they got, well, Rey Mysterio won the time. Man, that was one time.
Yeah.
And that was a gimmick. You know?
Yes.
You know, right now what's wrong with pro wrestling is it's not as believable like it, you know, remember when we were coming up, it was believable. Dick the Bruiser could go out there and beat the crap out of anybody with his spitting butt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got a 300-pound junkyard dog out there, and you believe that he's going to go out there and beat somebody up. You're not going to put Ali Stevens in the ring with a 150-pound guy, and I'm supposed to, you know, yeah, I'll give him a little bit. Don't get me wrong, but the realism is if I was in a bar fight with this kid, I'm going to kill him.
Yes.
And that's the realism. I come back. I've been in WCW. I've been in the ring with Mike Awesome. I've been in the ring with the Natural Born Thrillers. I've been in the ring, I got my butt kicked, but I was in the ring with and you want me to get in here with this 100-and-something pound guy who, because his father gave the company money to start your little fed, I'm supposed to? Nah, man, I couldn't handle that. You know. So I got out. You know, I said, let me get out. You know, and the one thing that a lot of wrestlers do that I didn't want to do is when your career is over, you have nothing really to fall back on. So believe it or not, brother, I went back to school.
Wise choice.
Yeah, a lot of people are shocked about that. I went back to school. I got a degree, you know, heating and cooling. I opened a heating and cooling company. You know, it's still pretty successful, which is what I do during the week. You know, so we do stuff for Sears Home Improvement. So you know, I'm not only big, tall, built, and cute. I'm smart.
But you know, that was the wisest thing to do, because with one company out there, and even still, you know, who knows what the future is in the wrestling business. You don't want to lay all your eggs in that basket.
Exactly.
You know? So I definitely, it was the smart thing to do. I'm glad to hear, you know, that you're successful, and what are your future plans for wrestling? Just you know, just take it as it comes, or?
Well, I mean, I truly believe that life is a full circle, and if you look at what's going on now, you're about to have another 3 or 4 companies, national companies, just like it used to be. And one of my reasons for coming, matter of fact, not one of, my main reason for coming back down to Memphis was, I had 2 reasons. Number one, like I said, Bobby Jagger made it clear that I need to go down and learn from Jerry Lawler, because that's what they're looking for nowadays, which is what I've been doing. But second is I wanted to prove that because a lot of people thought Ali was a gimmick and what do they call it, one-hit wonder?
Yeah.
Down there. You know, because you know the old saying, if you can make it in Memphis, you can make it anywhere in this business. If you can do it in Memphis, you can do it anywhere.
Right.
And I wanted to come down and prove that Ali could you know, that it could happen again, and it did. I mean, the fans chanting, the ratings when I'm on, in general, again, with good writing. I mean, I don't really get into how they wrote the show or whatever else. You know, it worked for me. You know, it was working for me. So, you know, I wanted to come down and prove that, you know, I was not a one-hit wonder down there, and I felt that being able to go to TNA or to WWE and say, look, you know, not one time but twice I've been able to come down to Memphis and wrestle with names and stars who, you know, and hold my own. You know, I can never compare myself to Jerry Lawler. I can never compare myself to Coco Beware. I can't even say I can compare myself to Reggie B. Fine, you know. But by the same token, you cannot say that I did not hold my own.
Right, because how many people can be off the TV for that many years and just walk out there and you know, by the crowd response, it's like you never left. You know,
right,
like
exactly.
You've been there the week before. It was amazing. You know, because I was interested when I heard you were coming back. Like, wow, well, it'd be interesting to see how the fans react to him and if he can still get over. And yeah, me and Brian, who runs the website, was talking about that. He's like, man, he's like, they love him. He said, you know, he's over just like he was when he walked out of Power Pro. I was like, man, that's crazy.
Well, and that's what I wanted to. You know, I want to make a second run, because I think that a lot of times in our business it's hard to get that second shot. But the fact is, in my opinion, I really never got that first one.
Right.
You know, I got there, like I said, I got a couple of shots, but I never got my writing. You know, writers never got to work with me. Nothing ever got laid out. And I believe if I'm given the opportunity, you know, because technically, like if you look at the roster at TNA, they got a great roster, and you know, I believe Ali would fit in perfectly there. I think I could do good in WWE also if given the opportunity with, you know, to actually shine. I think I probably need a little more size for WWE, but overall, you know.
I think the timing's better because, like you said, you came in at a time when WCW was just standing room only with talent and stars to where they didn't know what to do with the stars they had, much less develop any new ones.
Exactly.
But right now, WWE and TNA both and all the companies, they're looking for the next big star. They're looking to develop somebody that has some talent. So I think it's, the timing couldn't be better.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, brother. That's what I'm hoping. But like right now with what's going on with Memphis Wrestling now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that's going to work because everybody wants when they want to see you, when they want to watch your stuff, they want to see your television stuff. They want to see you on, they want to see you. Like I used to hear a lot of stuff about why the wrestlers come down to Memphis Wrestling and wrestle for Corey, and a lot of people just don't understand the fact that that television exposure is what you need if you want to make it, if you want to get out there.
Right.
Those ratings that you guys post on that website, you don't understand how important. A normal person may look at them and not understand what it is. But when you hand that kind of stuff to WWE or you hand that stuff to TNA and they're going, wow, okay, well, he's on here with Jerry Lawler, blah, 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 and his segment is a good boost.
Right.
That does mean something. That means that people want to see. That means, hey, Ali can carry it, can at least get people to flip the channel. You let Jerry Lawler bring in the people and you let Ali, keep them or bring more, and, stuff like that. So it's, you get that opportunity. If people don't understand just how important that is to a person who's trying to get his name out there.
That's true. Well, man, we're down to just under a minute left, so we're going to wrap things up. But, man, I appreciate you calling in. It's been a great interview. And, again, I'm very sorry about all the confusion at the beginning with the phone troubles.
No, that's all right, bro. That's all right.
But we're glad to have you and hope to have you back again. And best of luck with the second run, man.
All right, brother. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you again.
All right, man. Take care.
Right, have a good one. Bye.
All right, folks, Atomic Dog, Ali Stevens, and I apologize to all of you listening as well for the trouble at the beginning. It's just something was screwed up with the phone. But Ali is a super nice guy. I thought it was a good interview, good talking to him, and like he said, he's making another run at it. So we wish him the best of luck and hope he does well, and I'm sure he will. So be sure and join us next week. Monday the 14th at 10 a.m. we will be joined by Izzy Rotten, also known as Special Ed, and Izzy has promised that he has a lot to say and a lot to vent about, and of course Izzy never at a loss for words, so that should be an interesting interview. The week after that, on the 21st, we will be talking to the Iceman. Jamie Dundee is going to be calling in, and he's got a lot on his mind about Memphis Wrestling as well. So those two interviews should be very interesting. Looking forward to those. And again, we thank Ali for joining us today for a great interview. Thank you for listening, and be sure and tune in to next week's Cheap Heat.